always from the heart of the city. And now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to L'Amour. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. The country appeared as empty ground. Big sagebrush, rabbit brush, intricate sky. Flocks of small birds, like packs of cards thrown up in the air. And a faint track drifting toward the red-walled horizon. Unquote. The words of Annie Proulx from her recent collection Close Range, Wyoming Stories, published in 1999 by Scribner. If Annie Proulx is the writer of the modern-day West, then Louis L'Amour defined its past. But some of what he wrote impacts our present. Some thoughts from the Old West for those of us living in wild, uncertain times. With Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Christopher Cross and Ride Like the Wind and the Eagles and Desperado. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Louis L'Amour was born Louis Dearborn L'Amour, also known as Tex Burns, and Jim Mayo, March 22nd, 1908, and died June 10th of 1988. He had more aliases than a wanted poster from his novels of the Old West. He sold more than 100 books, mostly westerns, with authentic portrayals of frontier life. Unquote. Merriam-Webster's Encyclopedia of Literature said this by way of a short biography. L'Amour began his career as a writer in the 1940s. He stopped using pseudonyms after Hondo was published in 1953. More than 30 of his books formed the basis of films, including How the West Was Won. His books sold 200 million copies in 20 languages. Unquote, and that's a success in any language. He wrote his westerns in another time, a less sensitive era of the world. But this was a man who knew change was on the distant horizon. His books no doubt inspired film directors like Sergio Leone, John Huston, and Clint Eastwood. But it is his take on modern life that interests me this hour, and his eerie premonition of something modern society has had to deal with. More about that later with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Molly Johnson and My Oh My and Amanda Marshall with Dark Horse. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. It is often said that one has but one life to live, but that is nonsense. For one who reads, there is no limit to the number of lives that may be lived. For fiction, biography, and history offer an inexhaustible number of lives in many parts of the world in all periods of time. Louis L'Amour, From Education of a Wandering Man, published by Bantam. And consider this thought about the author himself that was penned before his death. In the 1980s, Amy Wallace and Jerry Griswold in Parade wrote, Louis L'Amour, writer of Frontier Adventures, became so enamored of books that he owns 9,000 of them. Once you discover how much fun it can be to read, he says, life is never dull, and the interest grows with each book. My library is Aladdin's lamp. I can, at will, move into any time in history. I can talk with the great minds of the past, with philosophers, outlaws, cattlemen, adventurers, with kings, queens, and common sailors. It is all there, waiting for me. Unquote. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Gladys Knight with The Best Thing, Taylor Swift with A Love Story, and Gordon Lightfoot, If You Could Read My Mind. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. His thoughts on life outlived the Old West that he wrote about. Again, Louis L'Amour from The Walking Drum, published by Bantam. Up to a point, a man's life is shaped by environment, heredity, and changes in the world about him. Then there comes a time when it lies within his grasp to shape his life into the sort of thing he wishes it to be. Only the weak blame parents, their race, their times, lack of good fortune, or the quirks of fate. Everyone has it within his power to say, this I am today, that I will be tomorrow. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Kansas with Dust in the Wind, and Tim McGraw and Live Like You Were Dying. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. This is music from the original soundtrack to the documentary Antarctica, Another Desert of Sorts. Louis L'Amour wrote, today, one can sit in the comfort of one's own home and explore any part of the world or even outer space through books. They are all around us, offering such riches as can scarcely be believed. Also, I might add, having done both, it is better to sit in comfort with a cold drink at hand and read the tale than actually walk out of Mojave Desert. Louis L'Amour from Education of a Wandering Man, published by Bantam. And this from Bendigo Shafter, also published by Bantam. People don't wear out. They give up. As far as trails go, there's always an open trail for the mind if you keep the doors open and give it a chance. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. The Dixie Chicks with Landslide and America on a Horse with No Name. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. I've been featuring some excerpts from some of the writings of Louis L'Amour, famed Western writer, who not only dealt with the time that the frontier of the West was being opened. A lot of his writing was about the human condition. I have one last quote to conclude the hour. a chilling observation that could have been written about this century. Again, some years back he wrote, and I quote, "The terrorist lives for terror, not for the change he tells himself he wants. He masks the desire to kill and destroy behind the curtain of a cause." Unquote. Louis L'Amour, from A Trail of Memories, again published by Bantam. To write about life, you must be a keen observer. L'Amour was that, and so much more. He was born March 22nd, 1908, long before the internet became really an information tool for the world. I think he would have been comfortable with the internet. The world of the web has been likened to the lawlessness of the Wild West. It would have been a place he would have probably liked to bring law and order to. He died in 1988 at the age of 80. And I bet he would have had some suggestions for dealing with terror at the beginning of the 21st century. Lessons learned from his novels of the Old West. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.